Hello, everyone. Welcome to BRAP. It's a Saturday BRAP rant. I have with me the resident financial analyst for BRAP. We have Falky with us. And Falky, look, it's great seeing you because that means that humanity's lived to see another day.
Yeah,
Because you live in the
just
future. I live in the past. How are you today, Falky?
I'm doing all right actually. It's our first day of daylight savings, summertime, springtime, whatever you want to call it for your part of the world. So I lost an hour of my life overnight. It just disappeared. We accelerated further into the future, so to speak, and it's still the crazy, crazy mess that it was yesterday. So it's not any worse, not necessarily any better, but we're here to live another day. So yeah, um, not too bad. How are you going? Living the dream.
I'm not one to brag or, you know, say I told you so, but we told you so. We sat on this channel for months, for years. Look, you need to understand something. For those who are listening to BRAP, there's a reason why I have people like David Falke on as guests, because Falke is a financial analyst. He understands the numbers. He understands how large corporations operate. He understands the nuance. He could provide us a perspective based on expertise, right, that he has that you probably won't get anywhere else. Okay? There's a reason why Logic is one of the panel members of BRAP, because Logic has a software engineering background and has an MBA and has an MBA in finance, has managed P&L. He understands aspects of software engineering development and managing a business that other people don't have. And so when you come here, we're not doing the hand wavy stuff, as Logic likes to say. We're not out here trying to lie to people. We're trying to have a different conversation. We're trying to have a more nuanced conversation. We're trying to offer people some analysis, a little bit of critical thinking, if you will. Do with that information as you see fit. We're not going to tell you what you should or should not think, right? You listen to the show and you make your own decisions, or you come to your own conclusions. But what you won't get here is you won't get a lot of the hand wavy stuff and, oh, it makes sense because 2 + 2 is 4. Like, that's like, when you're dealing with billion-dollar industries, and I think you would agree with me, this Falke, the calculus is so much more complicated and complex than, well, if it makes sense, it can make money. If it's $5 billion in revenue, what's $300 million loss? Like, you don't get to be you don't get to be in a position of it being a billion-dollar company by accident. There's a lot of careful calculus and risk that goes into that. So, look, this has been a rough week for Xbox. And I say that not to make fun of Xbox. I say that because here we are again. And this has kind of been I think this has been over the last decade or so, a thing with Xbox, where we have these news stories, right? That it's like a domino effect. And it happened last year. There was rumors of, the Xbox exclusives are going to go to PlayStation, Nintendo Switch. Then there was the business meeting, right? Falke in February. And then after that, it was like, well, actually more stuff's coming than they let on. And then it became, the famous four, exactly. And then it was that domino effect of news that just didn't make Xbox look good or leadership look competent, to be frank. And here we are again with an Xbox Game Pass price increase, the second since the post-acquisition of Activision Blizzard, which, look, Lena Khan was on Twitter and said, look, I said this was going to happen, and she did. Now, there are some folks out there saying, well, she didn't really state her case well and really kind of double down the incumbent. And I don't totally disagree with that per se, but she did mention that, hey, M&As will and can and do result in increased prices to consumers and consolidation of the workforce. And that's what's happened. We've seen layoffs. We've seen studio closures. The things she's talked about And it's not just her, by the way. If you pull the string, if you and my goodness, Falky, we live in the day and age of information at our fingertips with something called the internet. We have Google, we have so many online resources. Please, for the love of God, go out there and do research. Harvard has a great business study on the impacts of mergers and acquisitions. And in that study, they discuss how mergers and acquisitions do typically lead to price increases to consumers, to less innovation, to job loss. And we've seen those things. We talked about this on the show. For all the people that were saying, oh, this is going to be great for developers. Pump the brakes, we said, because we've seen this before. We've seen M&As, especially in big tech, where they've gobbled up competitors or they've acquired someone. And what do? Falky, you've talked about it, right? You talked about ABK and what would happen with the workforce. And you said, I don't want to put words in your mouth, Falky, but what did you warn us would happen or say would happen?
So they would well, there were a lot of things I warned would likely happen because it's just how it goes. But with ABK, and they did the acquisition. From a personnel side, they were not going to need a lot of the back of house, which they still haven't cut, which is phenomenal. Mind-blowing stuff. There's still another 2,500 jobs there to go.
Falky, real quick. That stuff is coming.
Oh, it is. It's coming.
I'll tell you offline after the show because I can't, but I will tell you, and I know why. I know it's because they are okay. Falky, merger acquisition, right? Yep. You own Falky Inc. You buy BRAP Inc. We're running on different platforms, right? Operation software, operation platform, or is it operation HR platforms, right?
Yeah.
Different accounting systems, right? Yep. What are you going to do, Falky?
We got to do it properly, but we got to bring it all into one spot, and we got to find the most effective way of doing that. Sometimes, very rarely, but sometimes having the hurdle is just insurmountable. It's going to cost way too much to integrate into one system or move from one system to the other. But at some point, you're going to do a major upgrade, and you're just going to pull your 3 or 4 or 5 separate systems that are talking through an integrator into one system. Now, what the current circumstances that there's only 3 or 4 major providers for businesses that big, unless you've got your own bespoke software packages, but that's just ridiculous costs these days. So, and they all talk to each other and they can all transfer. There's businesses that make a living just moving from like SAP to Oracle or Oracle to Microsoft Azure or AWS to Microsoft. Like it's stupid. But when you go and buy another company and you integrate them and you get them all assimilated, and then you start to do the synergies and the cleanups, that's when you start dropping roles. You don't need 2 finance teams. You don't need 2 governance teams. You don't need 3 HR teams. And then when you finish carving out the corporate overhead section, that's when you go down and look at the studios and go, well, does every studio actually need its own IT team, or can we consolidate that into one group IT team? Can we consolidate our procurement into one location or one service? Can we consolidate this? Can we consolidate that? This is the consolidation and carving out the deadwood. I know it's a harsh way to say it, but that's what it is. It's carving out the deadwood services that are just surplus to needs. And in the current environment where minimalist approach to overhead services is the name of the game, that is where the war is being fought at the moment. It's just a bloodbath. It is an absolute bloodbath. Unless you are hammering on the coalface or you're required, like must have this role in our organization, otherwise we cannot function, you're in the crosshairs in a big way. And that's what we warned people about, is it's not going to be great for everyone. They're not going to all of a sudden be all in a union and protected and have jobs and it's going to be happy-go-lucky and they'll do whatever they like and show up and be free to do whatever they want. It's going to be, personnel are going to lose jobs. Studios are going to get shut down. Projects are going to get cut because suddenly they're fighting for funding from a single source and they're fighting against other projects that aren't even in gaming. Gaming is not the primary focus here. So it's, We were talking about it before we went live, and I was, say, let's just said that tweet the other day. Said be classy with your victory laps, and that was aimed at you. That was aimed at a few other people, and I can appreciate that there's a lot of people here that are, we've been talking about this for 2, 3, 4 years ago, even where the writing was on the wall and we could see the decisions they were taking, and because this isn't a 5 second to decide now and do it tomorrow. Getting to this point, this is decisions made 12, 18, 24 months ago in a strategic pathway because it's built into these multi-year plans that they do. They'll get to an investment decision point and they'll say, yes, are we going to do this, or no, we're not going to do it. They'll check how the market winds are going and a few other bits and pieces, and they'll go from there. But the outcome here is people are going to lose jobs. We said that was going to happen. People are going to lose jobs. Games are going to get cancelled. Studios are going to get shut down. There's not an awful lot of good that's going to come from this because it's going to end up costing the end user a crap load more, no matter how they want to get access to these things. Whether you buy it, rent it, stream it, subscription, it doesn't matter. It was going to cost more. They couldn't sustain it at the value point they were talking about because they weren't getting the growth in the numbers to keep that going. And when you can't grow your user base, the other option you've got to make the money is to raise the pricing and cut the costs, and do both at an extremely heavy rate of increment, or a very fast increments, because you can't sit back and wait. The problem they've got now is Microsoft doesn't have Big Daddy Warbucks wallet in their hand with a platinum credit card there and an endless supply of cash. They spent the cash, and now Microsoft needs cash to get back into their core business, which actually makes them money. So now Xbox and the gaming division has got to be self-sufficient. And it can't be self-sufficient with the numbers that it was presenting. And when we were at the time, and when you link this back to Lena Khan's case against them, it was predicated on, and there's people making comments about it was this, it was that, it was everything else. Read the FTC documents. I read the documents. I know you read the documents, and I know Logic read the documents. Read the documents. The argument was the consolidation was going to be bad because it was going to lose a large amount of jobs. It was going to cause price hikes, and it would potentially cause price hikes, and it was going to cause an issue with access. And the only ways they could get around that was to change, to put some deals in place so that they could get around the access problem. Lo and behold, it turns out that was probably the saving grace for Xbox at the time to stop them from getting shut down completely, because they had to put stuff on PlayStation. They found out how much money they actually make out of it. But then they've then gone and pivoted further and let more into this whole, well, we'll put more games out in multiple places. And then they found out that the hardware was stalling out. So there's no point in making hardware and selling it because their ecosystem doesn't sustain it. Now they're talking about how do we keep a digital library for people? It's just domino effect of getting out of being a platform and an ecosystem and just going to being a software provider, which is what they've been trying to do for the better part of 7 or 8 years. But the pathway of getting there in buying ABK means that it's now going to be more expensive. And the article you've got sitting up there on the screen underlines the main thing we said. When everyone said buy ABK, put Call of Duty in Game Pass, and that's it, it'll kill PlayStation. No, it won't kill PlayStation. PlayStation will be able to replace that money that's lost. It might take 1 or 2 years, but they'll replace the 300-400 million they were getting out of this, and that'll be fine. But then remember, PlayStation's now not got the marketing deals where they have to put all the money into doing the $250-300 million marketing campaigns. So all of a sudden, they're in a better position. Look what happened with Black Ops 6. 80-something% of console sales is on PlayStation. So there's over a couple of million copies sold on PlayStation, and they've got minimal inputs and maximum outcome of that. And they've got a bigger share of that revenue. What has happened here at Xbox? They're saying, and just reading this article, they have given up more than 300 million in sales because those games were accessed through Game Pass instead of being bought. That is a phenomenal number, and that wording of that could be interpreted, and I'd be interested to hear from the source if it is this or not. Is the 300 million just this is how many copies times that dollar per copy, and that's their total, or is this 300 million after factoring in the subscription pieces? Because it doesn't state that, and if it's 300 million after factoring in the subscriptions that were picked up to access it, if people were getting it on $1 deals, like it's phenomenally worse than what we were saying it could be. You look at the financials for the consolidation points since they bought it, and I said at the time, this is potentially going to be a $2 to $2.5 billion issue, loss point for Xbox, and it's turned out to be in excess of $3 billion because of the revenue eliminations and the additional costs associated with it, and it's still carrying some of those costs. Like, this is phenomenally bad. And I as much as I feel like I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place, I'll just be brutally honest with yourself and those who are listening to this at any point. I like being right. No, people like being right. I've particularly liked being proven right when a heap of people have said, no, you're wrong, because they underestimate my intelligence and my capabilities. And I am right, and I was right, and I continue to be correct on this. But me sitting here saying, I told you so, makes me feel good, but it makes me feel bad because me being right means that thousands of people are going to lose their job. Thousands of millions of gamers have now had massive price increases to access things that they want to play, and they're having their options of access taken away from them. It's being limited to them. It's actually costing them more with less there than what they had last month, if you dig into the background of this. And for people to get online and start banging on about, oh, comparison this, comparison that, and all the rest of it, and those who are not classy about taking their victory laps here, it's quite a sad state of affairs. Like, this is a train wreck we have seen coming for years, and through so much personal effort from, not just you and me, but others that sat around and agreed with us and discussed it with us, and all take the same perspective. We tried and tried and tried to convince those that actually had influence that this was a bad idea, that this was not something to champion for. This was going to cause a problem, and it's going to be nasty, and it's not going to be pleasant, and you're going to regret it. Lena Khan tried to tell them that in the FTC documents. It's listed out in there. What will happen? People will lose their jobs. Studios will get shut down. There'll be a limitation on access points and all the rest of it. And she got laughed out of the room. And I'm sitting here with mixed emotions about this because I'm happy I was right, but me being right means that a lot of people are suffering for it. And I just, for the life of me, cannot figure out why so many people thought this was a great idea who had no effing clue about how any of this would work and chose to not listen to those of us who work in this stuff every single day.
Mm-hmm.
Every single day. I just, it baffles me some days.
I mean, yeah, and we weren't saying, and it's what's unfortunate when you have this conversation with people, they're more concerned about being right, right? It's
Yeah.
and then championing a brand, like Cycle Gamer saying he read the filings wrong. Then LOL. So that's the kind of commentary that I'm referring to, like the LOL. No, Fauci actually, we all read the article, or I'm sorry, the filing by the FTC at the time, and Cycle Gamer. I could tell you that the FTC, their attempt to block the merger under Section 7 of the Clayton Act, arguing it would substantially lessen competition. The FTC filings and evidentiary hearing included concerns about post-merger harms such as price hikes in subscription services like GamePass, layoffs at Activision Blizzard and Xbox divisions, reduced investment in product quality and output. This is per the FTC. That's what the FTC said, Cycle Gamer.
That's right.
I don't know how much clearer that can get.
Well, there's the nitpicking questions that are showing up in there now as well. Like, is question there, what option was taken away when it comes to Call of Duty? I'm not saying the option for Call of Duty was taken away. I'm saying the options to access games is taken away as a result of this merger. And again, if you want to get into the nitpick specifics about game by game, that's not how these things work. Microsoft bought ABK. They have since subsequently, what they've done in the last week is they've gone from saying, we're selling you a product, day and date, all there. And now it's, you pay more to have access to less games in the base model. You're never going to get day and date in the base model, whereas they did previously before the change up that happened 12 months ago. Before that, you $15 a month for the top level, you get everything, and they promised you day and date, and they sold it to you with day and date, and that's how they got people to commit to this thing. Don't worry about buying your games; you can just get them here. All Xbox first party games are going to be in Game Pass. Play it day one in Game Pass. It's going to be in games. Always going to be in Game Pass. And what we've got now, in a couple of weeks' time, when this all kicks in for those that are continuing, and what is today's reality for those that are new, if you pay the base bottom end, you get access to online gaming and I think it's 50 something games or whatever it is. There's a minimal list there, and you don't get day one. If you go the middle tier, you get first party games within 12 months of launch, I think it was, but no more day one. And you go to the top tier and you get, there's promising 75 plus games day one at launch. And I'd love to know what the 75 games are, because that's going to cost them an absolute fortune. Right, so then they've got to find the funding for that. But it's very clear that Call of Duty is not going to be in the top level there. When they went and did all these deals, the understanding of what they're selling to the consumer was, you're going to get it in their day one. And now it's not. But not only is it not in their day one, Xbox have taken away support for their hardware. You're buying one is damn near impossible. So getting a console is damn near impossible. So you got to get it on PC, and the access there is now going to cost you more, or you got to buy the game. And then they, through a long and arduous process, when the FTC have said, this will restrict competition on it, and it has, because there's no competing between Xbox and PlayStation now for benefits and what come of it. The whole of soul is controlled at Xbox land by Microsoft. And yeah, they put it out on other consoles, but have we seen the quality improve, or have we seen the quality reduce? If you read the general consensus, Call of Duty's quality has reduced significantly in the last two iterations. And I've seen that they're talking about the next one that's coming out has got reloading while wall jumping and some other stuff, and he's get absolutely hammered by the Call of Duty community. So to answer the Cycle Gamer's question is what options were taken away when it comes to COD, it's not specifically an option of access for a particular game, though I'm using that as the example. The FTC said there'd be a quality drop. Tick, that has occurred. The FTC said there would be an issue on restriction of access of some of these games. Yeah, tick, that has occurred. It's no longer as freely available as it was when they did the deal, because it's not in Game Pass. So now you've got to buy it, but you've got to only buy it from certain locations on certain platforms. And
well, fuck it, it is an ultimate.
Sorry, yeah, but the flow-on effect from that is the broader piece at a higher level is all of a sudden they spend all this money and they got to find ways to recoup it. They got to find ways to make it return on investment for it.
Well, that's why we have the ultimate tier. Yeah,
that's the impact. They've now cranked up the price for Game Pass and stripped benefits out of it. They're not adding. They're saying, "Oh, we'll give you more value." They've told us several times before, get all these games day one, play the new games day one. You will get it day one. Have they delivered? Not even close.
But Falky, that is
thing on repeat.
That is one of the concerns that was voiced not by just the FTC, but by the UK, the EU.
Yep. CMA.
It wasn't
EU.
just it just wasn't the FTC. And to your point, I mean, there was they've paywalled Call of Duty and their day and date, at least, right? Where day and date was just generally across the board, right? When they launched the service, right?
Yep.
And you see the changes post merger. That's the point, right? There was an increase last year in pricing, and now you had these 3 new tiers, right? Which there's an increase in pricing in the ultimate tier, which is where you get the day and date exclude. Which, look, a lot of people I've always said this: the appeal of Xbox Game Pass is the day and date first party. Now, granted, I understand there are people out there that are like, I could wait. I'm not one of those individuals. I'm not going to wait a year, for an Xbox published game within a year of launch. I'm not going to wait for that.
No.
And so I would have ventured that many are probably not going to wait. They're going to go with the ultimate $30
Yep.
or $360 a year. Uh,
Yeah.
but the cause and effect is evident here, right? Post merger,
Well,
you're seeing these changes. Yeah.
what we're saying, you can buy Call of Duty Ultimate Edition for $120 US. At the time, we were saying you could buy it for base model for $70, or you could go 120 and get everything, battle passes, blah blah, whatever. And it was on console, and you're good. And it was the same either way, PlayStation, Xbox, didn't matter. What we're looking at right now is you can buy it, but there might getting into the ecosystem is going to be difficult because it's damn near impossible to get your hands on an Xbox console. So we want you to play it on PC.
Well,
But if you go and try and buy it to play it on PC, their preference is for you to get it through the subscription, but it doesn't exist in the subscription anymore for Call of Duty, but everything else is there. So they've taken a huge value driver out of that subscription model. So now you just got to go and buy it. You can buy it from, there's no guarantee it's going to be on Steam. You can buy it from Microsoft, or you can buy it from on PlayStation and play it on console. But the proposition at the time was you will be able to play this in the subscription service. And now it's not. And that is having an option taken away. That is what we, CMA, FTC, everyone else said. You'll have your options of access taken away.
so I mean, yeah, and just to be clear, Falky said not saying that like that it's not available with Game Pass now. What he's saying is that the way the original framework of Game Pass has changed. You don't
hmm
get that access anymore
So think
at
about
that
what was there.
cheaper price point. Yeah.
Think about what was there 2 years ago, and they've cranked the price up on a promise that they're going to deliver more, and it's not there now. But they've taken all the stuff away that you used to have at the lower price point. Is that not changing your
Mhm.
access? That's just scummy to begin with. But specific examples aside, again, these were things that we mentioned, we spoke about, were potential options and things that could happen. And yeah, it's one of those times where you'd one of those instances in life where you'd love to be wrong. You'd absolutely love to be wrong, and you would absolutely accept it if you were wrong. But unfortunately, we weren't wrong, and it's getting worse. And now, when people stand up and defend this and go, "Oh, it's not it's not this, it's not that, it's the economic environment, it's this, it's that," the only reason that Xbox is in this position through poor management decisions, in that they're now being forced to chase this money because they have to, is because they went and bought ABK and fucked it up so badly in their estimates. They fucked it up so badly, and they didn't listen to anyone who knew better. Christ, we sit on the sidelines. We're not even involved in the company. We sit on the sidelines and read the investor information and look at this, and we can tell just from our professional knowledge how this stuff works. We could tell it was going to happen.
I mean, to your point, Falky, about what we talked about 2 years ago and what we're seeing happen. I mean, this is exactly what we thought would happen.
Yeah.
You know, um,
Now
it's
it's fair enough. Look, sorry, it's fair enough if people want to sit back and have their different perspectives, opinions, and nitpick specific examples and try and argue it out at that point. You've got to come up to the higher level. You can't stay at a specific example. You've got to come up. You can use examples to illustrate, but you can't stay there as an argument point. You've got to come up to the higher level because that is where this impact is happening. They don't look at this and go, "Oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do that." Because we think one particular game or two particular games or this particular subset is going to be better. 2 months ago, if you had Essentials, you had access to a large number of games. In a month's time, it's going to be reduced. If you don't own anything, your access to what you thought you had is going to be reduced unless you want to pay more for it. And I say it's a scummy business practice. And yeah, others have done restructures and others have charged money for it. But I'm yet to understand how you could go from screaming the benefits were going to be there and always going to be there, and all of a sudden they're not. When PlayStation did their changes, they were very upfront about it. You're going to get this, and you're going to get this at this level, and that's what it's going to be. And yeah, we're going to probably going to raise the price on it at some point. But we're not going to change the pricing points of the higher tiers and then strip everything out that you previously had. Same, Nintendo's doing the same thing with their restructure for the Switch 2 stuff. You go on there, you get these bits and pieces, you can access this, or you can buy it there. But you can still buy physical for PlayStation. You can still buy physical for Nintendo, which means you can go and trade the stuff. As it stands right now, for what's happened in the background that most people aren't even discussing because of this, Xbox is dropping support for brick and mortar stores, which means that they're not selling hardware.
Retailers, Costco's liquidating, or was it Costco Sam's Club? I forget which one, is liquidating Xbox hardware. I'm hearing that it's the other retailers will soon start liquidating Xbox hardware, and that Microsoft may stop. Microsoft has already stopped production runs. They've already stopped production runs. Yeah, they stopped production runs on Xbox Series X.
So while they're doing this, and then they're stopping the physical stuff, so the second-hand trading market is the only real place you're going to be able to do it. You can't. I go to the local EB Games here. They've got advertising for Metal Gear Solid Delta with Xbox written all over it everywhere, but can't actually buy the physical game because Microsoft and Xbox aren't supporting that physical game getting out to into the stores. The only thing that they get support, and they have to argue to get support from it, and it's dropping as well, is controllers and Battle Pass cards. They've got nothing there. All the games they've got on the shelf are all secondhand, traded games. So if they're reducing, like the consoles going out of the way of the dodo bird for them, and you can't get access to the brand new stuff through brick and mortar, so you've got to go through particular points and to be able to access the stuff. Again, that is reducing your options, and it's happening because they can't afford to maintain the thing because they spent too much money on what they're doing to buy. It baffles me that people keep saying that, oh, we knew this was coming, we always knew this was coming, and then turn around in the next breath and go, oh, this is a disaster. It's great for this, but it's horrible for that. It's great for this, it's horrible for that. It's like, why this is a surprise to anyone is beyond me. But now, as you alluded to at the start, we're not in the zone of, oh, this is a minor hiccup or a bit of a jump and they'll be able to figure it out. We're in the zone of where, again, we said if this came to fruition, there's a real chance here that Xbox may cease to exist. So, funny enough, I've heard a few people talking about if the console disappears completely and they just go to software development, how much longer do they hold on to it for?
Yeah.
Look at the personnel changes at Microsoft. I'd tell you what, you wouldn't want to be under the new guy's leadership.
Oh, the new CEO. Yeah. Well, they just recently they announced this past week they split functions now. They CEO over commercial business, and then Satya focusing on. And I heard that Satya was tired of Xbox. Like he was just done with the division. Now he's focusing on AI. And one of the things I did here too that investors weren't necessarily happy, which you talked about, Fauci. You talked about this. You said yourself that they would be better off investing that 60 billion or whatever it was to buy Activision and investing that into AI, which would be a viable business, a viable revenue stream for them, right? And now, like you see a lot of the reshuffling, a lot of the layoffs of 10,000 or so employees, a lot of that was to reposition the organization to go after AI, right? To free up money. And what I've heard is that like the investors and the bean counters are like, WTF, like we spent $60 billion on a business that is a small fraction of the overall revenue for the organization, and in a business unit that really doesn't uh, fit within the broader, the broader what's the word I'm looking for here? The broader
The
oh my gosh,
offerings.
sorry, I had offerings and broader direction for the organization and where they want to
And
go.
in their mid to long term strategy, yeah.
Yeah, and so you have this investment in AI, and what I've heard is that like people internally like, why do we spend this money when this when clearly we're not? And the $300 million, when I understand, was kind of like the big tipping point. We're like, okay, enough. Like we need to double down. To your point, Fuck, you said this earlier,
Mm.
right? The way you're going to recoup some of those costs and relieve some of the margins, right? Because and I said this on Crossfire. In fact, what limited finance knowledge I have. But I said this appears to me that they are downstream pressures on the profit margins of the Xbox business, right? And
Clearly.
yeah, clearly, right? And yeah, exactly. And when people were like, oh, well, Game Pass is profitable, Microsoft said they did, but they weren't including the cost of development, the cost to keep the lights on, right? All the other costs, right, associated with running a business were not included. Okay. And and for the life of me, I never understood why people were just saying things like Bobby Kotick doesn't know what he's talking about when he said it doesn't make sense to release a AAA game day and date in a subscription service. Sean Layden said the same thing. Strauss Zelnick said the same thing. We've had other game developers say the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
That AAA releases, given their massive budgets, right?
Well, yeah, it's
Leasing,
that's even bleeding in the top end AA now.
yeah. Well, yeah, it's a great point. But my point, Fauci, is that that was always my thing. Like the math isn't mathing here, right? And I just and now we look at this, right? I think about the incredible amount of pressure, right, to the business, right, to the margins. And then you see this 300 million. My understanding is they say these 300 million, and they're like, enough's enough, right? Like this thing needs to turn around. And to your point, Fauci, you said this earlier in the show. The way you make that happen is you jack up the price of the Game Pass Ultimate tier by 50%. You lay off employees, which is unfortunate, but that is a sad reality, right? And by the way, there are going to be more. There are going to be more. We talked about the back office operational roles that are going to be impacted here shortly once that integration is completed. Because I know for a fact that integration is not completed. They're still working on that.
Yeah.
I know for a fact that it's not.
Same.
But so there's going to be layoffs, right, from that, because again, duplication of efforts. There's going to be studio closures. My understanding now, it's going to be more okay. Let's get rid of the studios that probably don't make sense to have. Let's focus on propping up and supporting the IPs that we own that are guaranteed revenue drivers, right? Anything from ABK, anything not everything from Bethesda is going to be safe. And then obviously, Mojang and Minecraft. But there's going to be more fallout from this.
Yeah.
I think when we go and this is and these are the things that we were talking about over the last 2 years, right? That there wasn't unless they were able to, and Phil even said it, hey, if we don't get to like 100 million by 2027, we're going to be having a different conversation. I think Game Pass was it was about 30 million at that point. And I'm like, oh shit, Phil, like if you're saying that,
I think that conversation got brought forward a couple of years.
yeah, I think and honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if Phil is gone by the end of the year.
He should be putting his hand up to retire. Case in point, when they put the 4 games on PlayStation and you saw the impact of, even though they weren't a really sensible 4 games to be doing it with, you saw there was an impact. And suddenly it was, holy shit, we can actually sell stuff. We might not be selling it to the maximum potential. We sell stuff. Look at the revenue bump here. And then Amy Hood takes notice and goes, well, you guys are absolutely doing one behind the shed here. You need to get this thing sorted out. Like, get it fixed. When the top CFO is telling the divisional CFO, you've got it wrong, get it fixed, that's a massive power play. That's huge. Don't misconstrue this. When the top finance person of a global group goes to the divisional top finance person and says, you've got it wrong, fix it, that's a massive black mark.
And
That's
not fix it
huge.
and not fix it over the next 5 years. Fix it right now.
Fix it now. You need to do stuff in our mid-range strategy, 3 to 5 year corporate plan. What you've done is not only has it not worked, it's worked poorly. You now need to change tact mid-plan. When that happens in these size corporations, the alarm bells are going off like it's midnight on doomsday. The klaxons are going off like crazy. There are red lights flashing everywhere, and the numbers that they're looking at would look horrible. And if this is the impact we're seeing here, lost 300 million in sales from one game, which is an annual release. Add that up over a couple of years, and you're not getting any trade back on that, but the money they've got to put in to build this thing, we're talking about billions of dollars in lost revenue. That has an impact. That gets shit noticed. That makes it to the board. A $300 million loss of potential revenue, that's not a rounding error, even at Microsoft. That is more than just a footnote. That should be in the disclosures in the internal reporting. That a business decision has resulted in a $300 million lost sales impact. And when you take that across all the other games, these 75 they're talking about day and date for the ultimate level that's coming, what games are they going to be putting in there? You imagine the price that they're going to have to pay for some of them?
Well, Falky, this is
the problem and they're never going to get the sports games. They're never going to get the Take-Two top tier games. They're never going to get any of that stuff in there.
No, not day and date. They're not. No, not day and date. I mean, Strauss Zelnick's going to charge a premium price if they want those games in Game Pass. He's not going to cannibalize because he's talked about it. It doesn't make sense. Strauss Zelnick behind 2K. He's like, it doesn't make sense to release your big AAA games day and date in a subscription service. You cannibalize sales. And I think, remember, people were upset about Laura Fryer. I don't know if you remember Laura Fryer. She was a former Xbox team member, helped with the launch of Gears. The 360 was there for the original Xbox. And she said that Xbox has no desire, literally can't ship hardware anymore. And she said this earlier in the year. And I don't disagree with her. I'm sure Laura has conversations with the people at Xbox still, giving her time there, because there's still some people that are there that are there when she was there. But I think they're going to exit hardware, and there is that rumor now, and I don't know. Well, I guess I can say this. I mean, we had Tim Dog on the show on Wednesday. Tim is just he was off Twitter for a little bit, and he's just come back, and he's saying, I will talk more, guys. The official word probably will come soon. Many people I suspect will be leaving, and that's a reference to hardware, that they're done, that they're out of the hardware business, and I was I was part of the camp that thought, okay, they're going to give it one more go next generation, because they confirmed it. I think the hammer, though, and for what I've heard about this $300 million loss, like, that has really pissed a lot of people off, a lot of the bean counters, and it's viewed as irresponsible and mismanagement. And I think they're gonna, if what Tim is saying is true, which I'm inclined to believe that what Tim is saying is true, because there was also some other conversation around Xbox pulling hardware now, getting out of the hardware business completely. This is on Reddit, but Reset Era, and I forget the leaker's name. This individual had mentioned that that announcement was basically the Xbox was going to exit hardware. But look, I think Game Pass, the cannibalization of Game Pass, I don't think is just with software. It's also with hardware. I mean, that subscription model undermines, like, really the incentive to buy a console, because you don't need the console. You can play it on PC. You can play it on the cloud now.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, it's wild. Like they and at that price point that they have Xbox at now, they're literally telling you, don't buy our console. I'm like, what? like, like it's I don't see them. And look, there has been a declining relevance with Xbox hardware. The Xbox Series X and S sales have stagnated. Falky, we've seen not just quarterly declines, right? But yearly declines in hardware revenue consistently over the last couple of years. And on top of that, I see this $300 million. Falky, if you're the CFO at Microsoft, would you be incentivized to continue greenlighting hardware, R&D money to be invested? We know the margins are razor thin on hardware, and now you want to sell hardware when you're already when the rest of the business is already feeling a lot of pressure on its own margins. Like, do you want to introduce that into the equation? Probably not.
No, that is a nightmare you don't even want to go down. It's just
This drives you mad as a financial analyst, doesn't it, Falky?
It does. So
yeah,
accountants don't like lawyers, and financial analysts really don't like engineers. And I get along well with lawyers and I get along well with engineers, but they just don't see the granularity of the decision making because they can't work around. They've got to work in literals. But the one thing that irks me the most is when people in operations that don't understand finance and how it works will look at something, misunderstand it, make the decision, fail to listen to those that understand what the outcome will be, still do it anyway, and then turn around and look at it and it's a big steaming pile of a mess that's on flames and go, well, how the hell did that happen? Why didn't someone tell me this would happen? You just want to reach over and slap them hard because it's like, I told you, we told you, your analysts told you this was a reality. Amy Hood sat in on the court sessions and said, we expect this thing to be making a profitable return to shareholders from day one. This purchase. How the hell do you get a profitable return to purchases on day one when you give up $300 million in revenue and then you're banking $3.5 billion worth of losses out of the merger? They were making losses to begin with. It would be phenomenal the size of the number of losses they've accumulated over the last 3 years in just doing this stuff with ZeniMax and ABK. Like it would be a double-digit billion-dollar number that's been backfilled and backfunded by other parts of the organization. If you're the leech that's sucking opportunities out of your main business areas, of course those other mainline VPs and senior management aren't going to be happy with you. You alienate yourself at the bottom of the totem pole, and people will point at the revenue stream. Oh, Microsoft Gaming is now the third biggest revenue stream or fourth biggest revenue stream for Microsoft. I'm like, yeah, but it's 3 times lower than what the main one is, and it costs them more to generate that revenue. It costs them nearly 3 times as much to generate that revenue as what they pour into the bloody Azure stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And if their focus now is on AI, and think about the huge costs associated with running those server farms, those data banks, and all that sort of stuff.
The power to maintain and run those things.
Exactly. It's not a. We've spoken about it before,
power
but it is
plant.
not a joke. They
No,
are
it's not.
looking at building modular nuclear reactors attached to these data centers just to get them to run. And it's not to run the servers, it's to run the cooling systems. The amount of heat these things generate is stupid. Like melting concrete, and that's over 1,500 degrees in temperature Celsius. That's level of stupid that the heat these things can produce.
Hey, Falky, real quick, let me interrupt you here. I got to pay the bills quickly.
Sorry.
The game, no worries. The Gaming Ledger with a $5 Canadian super chat says most saw Xbox's demise coming a mile away. Mismanagement, weak exclusives, and lost identity. The real suspense now, which IPs they offload first. Look, that is. I said this earlier. There's going to be some more studio closures. There just is. Yep. And all of this points to what Falky just said about Amy Hood's expectations, right? That this thing's going to be, the ROI is going to be immediate to investors. That hasn't happened. We talk about the $300 million loss. I'm also going to state my business case here too, Falky, for why I don't think Tim is incorrect in saying, because Tim is saying now that like they're exiting hardware, that announcement's coming soon. I talked about R&D. Why would you R&D that? Why would you want to worry about razor thin profit margins on hardware? Because that's what you're dealing with when you release hardware, right?
Yeah,
You
you need to know.
yeah,
This is the issue. You need to know where you stand, and you can't do that without the research.
yeah. But remember, hardware the console models always worked. You always made up that loss in hardware with what? Software sales, right? But now you've cannibalized software sales because of Game Pass. But so I think for them exiting hardware, like we talk about hardware, we talked about. I remember we talked about this. We had this conversation maybe a couple months ago, Falky, when, or maybe it was when they raised the price of Xbox, and you said something. They're not getting those deals right
Yeah,
on parts anymore because
they're not getting the volume.
they're not
You're
getting the
not getting
volumes.
your volumetric discounts in production because you're just not getting the volume through.
Yeah, you don't have those economies of scales anymore that
Yeah.
favor you because you're not manufacturing as much. So I think that is a so you exit hardware, you slash manufacturing, distribution, all that overhead associated with that, right? Gone,
hmm
right?
Yep.
So that frees up money.
It does.
And what
That
and what do you
that's
do?
what
And what do you do with that money? Move it somewhere else.
you can put it somewhere else. But that's the issue though. If 18 months ago, if they gave up on hardware then and just stopped it when it started to really deteriorate, remember that quarter was 30 something% drop off in
Yeah,
hardware.
yeah,
If they called it quits, and that's when they started to really wind back to production. If they'd have just called it quits then, did a campaign run and say we won't make 50 million sold, so let's just run it out to 50 million and then release them into the wild. And if we got stock left at the end, we liquidate it, whatever, drop it in the secondhand market, and off it goes. And you start fire sailing stuff. If was it 12 months, 18 months ago, whenever it was, um, if they'd have called it quits then, the problem they had was that money would not have been kept in the gaming division. That money would have been redeployed somewhere else. So part of the strategy is when you're working your exit out, like working out your exit of something, is you go, well, when do I bail out so I can have the freedom to redeploy the cash within my segment, rather than having it go back into the pool and redeploy to a project somewhere else. That'll be the timing that Sarah and Phil and a couple others were hoping for. That got taken away from them. The second that Amy Hood saw what the hell was going on and it was making a major impact to her reporting to the board, that was the end of it. She stuck her foot down and said, "Nah, enough. This is what's going to happen." You imagine if someone like Lynn Tao was over there doing it? Like, she's an absolute shark, and she would have razor gang the thing to pieces by now. But the yeah, the other thing that we were talking about with those economies of scale and the hardware piece, you need to understand where you're at. So they made that big announcement about working with AMD. We're going to partner with AMD. We're going to do all this stuff with AMD. It's all really cool stuff. We're going to do it. We're going to do it. Up until the point of when you decide that you're not doing something, you keep going down the path that's been set before. And these big organizations do that. They will pour millions and tens of millions of dollars into something, and then they'll pull the plug when they say we're not doing it anymore. The decision's made, the plug's pulled. That's it. And that's when people get left scratching their head, going, "Well, they just announced it. Why did they pull the plug?" They need to know where they stand in terms of how much would it cost and what would they get out of it, and all the rest of it. And you've got to put some effort in to understand the nuts and bolts, and down to the nuts and screws and washer level of what is the cost of all this stuff going to be, and can we see a pathway forward in actually making money out of it. Loss leading console business doesn't work anymore. You can't do it as a loss lead, the console as a loss lead, and make it back up on the software unless you've got live service or access to live service. So when you consider how difficult it is for those that know what they're doing most of the time to actually get a live service game that sticks and sticks for a decent period of time, you're then relying on selling software. But if you're not making the software, you've got to attract the software developers to your platform. Well, when they've embedded so well in the other ones that already exist, you've got a major hurdle there to climb. you need to be able to understand what those costs are. And that's why they pour so much money into research and development, because you need to understand whether you can actually have a chance of making something out of this, and not just in a 6-month or 12-month period. You've got to look at it as a whole 7, 8, 9-year life cycle, or even a 10-year life cycle. The digital library thing we were talking about before, when Phil said that they lost the generation that was the worst one to lose, when everyone went to digital libraries. They pushed the point so hard to get people to just subscribe to Game Pass and their games would always be in there, that very few games were getting actually sold. First party games were getting sold in Microsoft. Then because they're accessing it through Game Pass, all of a sudden those libraries are disappearing. And there are people who have got an Xbox Series S and a subscription to Game Pass, and that's all they have. That's all that they've wanted. That's all they could afford because they believed what they were told. And they're not necessarily on social media, but they believe what they were told. This is good value, and they're happy to afford it. And all of a sudden, they're going to lose a heap of their games unless they crank it up and pay $30 a month. They might not actually be the ones that's paying for it. And teenage kids, parents might be paying for it, and all of a sudden, no, we're not doing that. You can just have the bottom end. Well,
yeah.
It's having forced people to accept the digital library and then manipulating that library. Well, it may do one of two things. It may force people to go and buy the games on Xbox, or they might say, well, bugger it, I'm jumping ship here because its stuff changes too much, and I'm just going to go and get on another platform where I can buy. If I got to buy the games, I might as well buy it on a platform where their games are on sale all the time, or I can get them physically and all the rest of it. It's harking back to the saying before, if the physical side of it deteriorates to the point where digital is the only option, there will be a large number of consumers that will move because their digital library just disappeared on them. They got nothing to show for it. So they'll abandon that, go to the competitor and go, oh, I can pretty much play all the games that I want to play. Because they're, the big annual releases, or they're the big live service games, or whatever they are. And it doesn't mean they have to go to console. They might go to PC, and do that and just go, right, well, here I am, and I'll have at it, and I'll just buy my stuff digitally, or I'll buy my stuff physically. And I can then still trade it and get better value out of it. And that is, again, the loss of the hardware of the platform is a result of poor decision making, and that they can't keep carrying the cost of having bought ABK.
Mm-hmm.
And you say, oh, I bit this, but that. You can have a successful console business if you sell 40 or 50 million consoles. I got a business case. I've seen business cases work for it. I've built one myself. I'm going to show you. At 40 or 50 million units sold in today's environment, you can still have a very, very successful business platform.
Mm-hmm.
Steam Deck has sold 4 or 5 million units, and the other handheld PCs have barely cracked 2 million or 3 million between all of them combined. So the Logitech and the ROG and all the rest of it, extremely niche market, but they still make money off those. Yes, they're freaking expensive, but you could run a loss lead program in that if you wanted to, but you need the support of the software. And that's what Xbox's biggest problem has been, is they just lack the software. This whole exclusives don't matter. Oof. Clearly they do, because there's only one company that's out there banging on about exclusives don't matter, and they're the ones that are in the shithole. So anyway, all right.
He's a shithole. No, but
sorry.
before
I'm prattling on a little bit, and I'm sort of brain dumping a bit here, and I don't mean to get too technical on people. I'm trying to keep it simple, but it's all related, and it all feeds back into that point you were making before of, why would we spend money on R&D when you've got to when clearly we're down the path of no return here, and we might as well just turn it off. So
why would you? Yeah, fuck you. Why would you invest in hardware, in a product lineup that is declined every quarter? And I just said it. You save on manufacturing, logistics, distribution,
Yeah.
R&D. Why? I mean, why? Like, why would you continue selling? Like,
Well,
is it
and that's the big question is why would you continue? And clearly someone thinks that they shouldn't. And that's a person that matters who thinks that they shouldn't. The only reason the R&D continues is because until the point where they say we're finished, they'll just keep working down that pathway. But all the signs are pointing to this thing is on its last legs, and unless something dramatic happens that will cost them a fortune to do, which they don't really have the money or the funding or the desire to do now, they're not going to turn it. And with the digital library piece, and now they're fiddling with people's digital libraries access through Game Pass. It's not great for consumers. In their confidence base of it. Now they might say, well, we just want people to buy stuff again. Come out and say it, but don't take away their access to be able to buy the stuff by removing the physical options and saying it's digital only. And there's heaps of publishers that are the amount of publishers that are avoiding Xbox as a platform at the moment is ridiculous. And I still can't figure out where they're going to get 75 games from. But that's more than one a week. Like that's insane.
and what kind of games
I
are
just
they?
that's
You know,
the
like
thing.
are
Day
they
one
you know
release.
are they indies? Are they like I think that matters, right?
Well, I don't see Madden, NFL,
No,
NHL,
I've seen
FIFA.
some people jump to that conclusion. I'm like, probably not.
No. Could you imagine? COD lost 300 million in sales. Could you imagine what the check they'd have to cut to get FIFA into Game Pass day one would be?
A lot of money.
Seriously, think about that. Call of Duty makes Prince cash, and they lost 300 million, and you're seeing the results of that loss of 300 million in revenue. FIFA prints cash like people don't really understand, but it prints big cash. It makes a lot of money, and it's there every year, and its impact is significantly. It's not necessarily more impactful in terms of revenue, but it's impactful in terms of just global access. EA's just been purchased by a private consortium, and they do not like Microsoft. You're probably looking at somewhere in the vicinity of 250 to 350 million dollars now, based off this information that's gone public, to get FIFA into Game Pass day one. And if they attach all the bundle subscription, all that sort of stuff in there, like they've done with Fortnite, you can add another 100 million on for that. Does anyone actually think that Microsoft is prepared to stump up close to $500 million every year for one game to go in that service? One game.
I would say no. No. I don't think they do that.
When they're saying it's only just cracked 5 billion in revenue coming through Game Pass, and they're going to surrender 10% of that to get one game in there. Is it going to change the subscriptions? No, it will not change their subscriptions.
I
It
guess
is not going to drive subscription growth.
I guess what I'm wondering now too, Falky, is since it sounds like they're banning first party hardware, if now the Xbox, from a hardware perspective, will exist only in third party, right? You'll have your third party partners, Asus, make Xbox hardware, right? Like I could see, huh?
It'd be like licensing. This is an
Yeah,
Xbox,
I mean
but
that
quick access to Game Pass
yeah, I
or
could see
quick
them doing
access
that.
to the streaming. That's
Yeah, I
the
could see
thing.
them. Yeah.
Where do you access it? They're contracting the access back to the streaming service or the subscription service, and even then, the Xbox ROG Ally has got issues around accessing libraries, and we've seen with the new change up here that currently you can access your games on the cloud if you own them at pretty much at any time. But now we're saying for the base level, you get unlimited cloud gaming access, but you're going to be put in a queue. Or, and this is a stupid thing where they devalue their services again, we've got a free version of Xbox Cloud Gaming, which has got ads in it, which you can access from any device that supports it. What's the point? What did you go through all the pain and suffering of doing this 3-tiered system for Game Pass if you're going to say something that you can get for free, which is pretty much the mainstay of the bottom end, so you can continue to access your library? You got to buy the library anyway. Or by the way, we're making it more difficult for you to do so. For $10 a month, when you could actually get the free version. The only thing you're giving up on is the games that are in Game Pass. So it's like, did they not learn from this? That you need to keep the freaking paywalls up if you want to survive? It's like every time they find a way of shooting themselves in the foot, they shoot another toe off. And then
All right.
throttling it. Throttling
So
the
Falk,
access is ridiculous.
so Falk, I need so Upper Room, who's in the live chat, he's talking about the 300 million, right? He's saying you only need 5 million subscribers over 3 months to make that back. Upper Room, that is an overly simplified calculation of how to make that 300 million back.
No.
It's not as
No, that's not even a correct way to respond to that. Sorry, Brap.
Yeah, go ahead.
They lost 300 million in revenue. To make that back, you would have to add that number of subscribers for that period of time. They would have to add them. It's not like they can just rely on who's already there. They would have to add them. You see the challenge?
He's saying you only need. He said, I think he's saying you only need to add 5 million. He's saying plus 5 million. So I think he's saying you only need to add 5 million subscribers over 3 months to make that back.
Yep. So you need a 20% upkick, effectively a 20% upkick in subscriber numbers for 3 months. Yeah, it's easy. 20% subscriber kick from where they're currently at. You need to increase get another 20% on for the next 3 months at the top tier. Yeah, like come on. It's not even close to being. When was the last time Game Pass, in broader terms, had a 20% uptick at that number? Like it's just
yeah. And I don't even think I don't even think that I don't even think that 5+ million would cover that sunken cost, because it's not just the cost of Call of Duty and Game Pass. It's the cost of everything, right? It's the cost to keep the lights on. It's the cost of the other licensing fees associated with third-party deals. It's the cost of other first-party studios that feed Game Pass. It's the overhead, the everything. The cost of doing business, right, is more than that 300 million. So I'm not so sure that 5. Let me know if my math is right here, Falky, or not. But I don't think that 5+ million in 3 months is enough to cover everything, right?
No, it's not. It's it's a long way short, actually. So $30 a month for to recover $300 million at $30 a month. You need something like, is it 10 million subscribers for in a month? So if you spread that out over 3 months, you still need, you'd need something like that. 5 million subs at $30 a month is 150 million. So you'd need 10 million at $30 in 1 month, or you would need 5 million at $30 for 2 months. But let's think about the size, not the percentage, but the actual volume of subs that you would that you're talking about here. Adding 5 million subscribers in a month and holding them for that number. If COD couldn't do it, nothing's going to do it.
Yeah, I think that's Upper Room's like point. He's like, that was like the plan. It didn't work. I see what you're saying. Yeah, he's saying just explain what the plan was going in, and that probably was the plan, right? You get Call of Duty, it's going to bring in a lot of people to Game Pass, and Game Pass did see a bump. I don't think we ever got an actual number in terms of new subscribers to Game Pass as a result of Call of Duty. I think what they did say was their highest level of new Game Pass subscribers. But what is that number? I mean, it could have been 100. Exactly right. I mean, it could have been 100, could have been 200, could have been 1,000. We don't know.
Exactly right. Well, think of it this way: they had the biggest single day of new subscriptions They had one of the biggest games of the year going in there. You can see now why it's happened with the point that I'm getting to. They had all this other stuff happening in that quarter with games releasing on PlayStation, bang, bang, bang. 82% of sales were on PlayStation for consoles, and they had bits on PC and all this other stuff. Call of Duty when it released. All of that, and they still only got a 2% growth in their Microsoft gaming revenue. 2% growth year on year. Think about that. It practically went nowhere. It's insane. So whatever they were buying those subs for had minimal effect on it. So anyway, percentages and volumes and all that sort of stuff, they have material meaning and they need to be discussed hand in hand. But anyway,
Yeah.
sorry, I was meaning to ask this question about Doomsayer was trying to get in touch with you about something.
Oh yeah. No, I did talk to him on DM.
Yep.
Yeah,
All right,
I
cool.
thought we'd have him on next week because I wanted to give you the platform here, the stage, if you will, Falky.
No, that's all right.
Yeah, but there is something. I want to go back to the CEO stuff real quick.
Yeah.
Because Logic, who wasn't able to join us this evening, Logic did say, let me share this. Here's Logic's tweet. 3-minute read at BRAP podcast turned me onto this link, and I had some thoughts. And this is the article as relates to Satya Nadella kind of being shuffled internally here at Microsoft. Still CEO, but heading a different. His role will be more cloud AI focused. So this is Logic. Some of his thoughts. I wanted to read. I thought it was very interesting. So Gabe Logic says the first is that this sounds very similar to a spool up to follow the route that HP did when it decided that it could not pursue both consumer and enterprise interest effectively as a single organization. So split into two corporations. It would mean that Satya is being positioned to shuffle off the stage as CEO, though I'm not ready to be bullish on that just yet. It could be an intersection between Satya's career goals and Microsoft's AI ventures. That what is cooking on the AI front is so big that Satya feels he's the only one person, or at least the most qualified person at Microsoft, to manage it directly with hands on the wheel, that he can't do that and run a significant portion of the rest of the company. If it's an impending split, I do think it will be just like HP. Too many Microsoft products are entangled to split in between enterprise and consumer. I could see cloud and AI as one corporation, and then enterprise products and consumer as the other. Where Satya may be developing Wonderlust as engineers age and those that get plucked to go down the management path, it is not unusual for us to get a yen to get back to something more purely technical as time in the management and corporate politics ranks go on and careers and closes in on the 10-year or so mark. Satya may be yearning to get back to working more closely and directly with engineering leaders in forging the AI path, forging the AI path, which is much more so a greenfield than managing the rest of Microsoft and its heavy hooks into legacy product lines where it's difficult to ever fully decouple from the past. What is weird is that Dybek Hap was just brought in as COO. It is highly unlikely that given her accolades and the newness of her arrival, that she would take any kind of backseat role. With OPS now moving to the commercial business, something is definitely up. Right on the heels of her role, Satya mentions that she is spearheading an overall company transformation. Until now, I've heard about some reshuffling of people into AI executive positions and a strategic pivot, but I've not heard this description of a company transformation. That to me means this is another step towards a massive reorg, and that the game of musical chairs is not over for Microsoft executives. It's also interesting that among these shifts, there was no mention of Amy Hood's financial org or her role changing. Usually in a corporation this size, little CFOs are matrixed out to their own business group, sectors, divisions, but have reporting lines back up to the corporate CFO. Well, some of the mini CFOs will likely shift here. There's still report up to Hood. Regardless, it is impossible to think that these shifts have zero impact on our or have root causes back to whatever's going on in the Xbox division. Whether cards are being put in order before spinning, whether cards are being put in order before handoff from Satya to Judson, so he's not immediately saddled with baggage, or if it's shifting executive leadership is already voicing changes and gaining influence and providing input on what they want executed on. It's hard to tell. So that's Logic's thoughts on the news here with Satya stepping out to be the CEO, kind of more handle or spearhead some of the AI initiatives there at Microsoft. Any thoughts on this, Falky?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They're bringing in some people who have got wins on the board in taking companies that are floundering and making them work. So they've just brought in somebody to be a new CEO to lead that stuff and crack it into shape, who's got pedigree and success in his CV for achieving that with companies that were, in the muck, so to speak. And Diabec Happe, sorry, that both Logic and I actually quite rate. She's the one who stepped up and turned GE from a basket case about to go bankrupt into a leading global presence again. And that took some big decisions and some pretty unpopular decisions at the time, but got it going. Turned them into an absolute powerhouse. Where they ended up with more than 500% increase in aggregate market capitalization after they landed it all. These people are not amateurs that they're bringing into Microsoft. They're putting together a strike team to fix the issue. And yeah, Microsoft is still viewed as, equally one of the largest market cap companies in the planet. And the share price is this and is that, and the multi-trillion-dollar company. Like, it means nothing if you can't sustain the turnover for revenue. And when there is so much question in the public arena around how do they control these costs and how do they get a charge of this, Microsoft can't afford to miss out on the AI battle that's happening. They just can't. They've got government contracts that demand that they perform. Can't afford to lose those. Can't afford to miss out. They need to be better at what they're doing. So hence the reason why they're bringing in these people who have done this seriously tough work in other organizations and in probably much harsher climates. I think it's great. I think they need to be brought back into shape. It's reminiscent of the .com bubble where people just grabbed on a hype train, grabbed investors' money, pissed it up a wall, and then the whole thing collapsed. And it was the investors at the end of the day that ended up paying for it, or the taxpayers ended up paying for the bailouts. When things are going good, these little things don't get picked up on. They're just carried, these little imperfections, these little problems, these little cost blowouts. And they just start to permeate really bad behavior, really poor fiscal discipline. And we've seen it not just at Microsoft, we saw it at Sony. Look what Sony's going through at the moment. They've got the Razer gang in there doing open heart surgery on that organization. And they're just coming into the back end of that piece there. We've seen
but real quick, Falk, it's interesting. You mentioned PlayStation, right? And them addressing some of the increasing their margins, right? And we saw how vocal they were about a business that is performing well in the market, right? So imagine what the conversation's like for an organization who has a business unit that's not performing well, right? Just like think about that for a second, right? I mean, somebody enacted cost-cutting measures and ways to improve their operating costs for the PlayStation business, right? They were very vocal about that. So imagine what Imagine what the conversations are like at Microsoft or Xbox, given what we know, right?
Well, we're seeing the results of those conversations. Again,
Yeah,
different business, what's the word I'm looking for here? Cultures.
that's
Um,
true.
but yeah,
That's a great point. Yeah, different culture. Yeah.
but the crux of it, they all work to the same theory. Reduce costs, increase revenue equals better results at the end. And that's what they're chasing. Now, their results target might be different. PlayStation said they wanted to get to, minimum of 10% net profit position for the group. And likewise, minimum 10% net profit as a baseline throughout all their business divisions,
Mm-hmm.
which is, they're they are buried in manufacturing. Hardware, physical stuff is their primary grounding. That's the core of and skeleton of who they are. But they make an awful lot of money in entertainment now. But that stuff is high input, high risk. They're trying to work out how to do low input, high risk, as opposed to Microsoft, who've got two of their three main business segments, like clockwork, will produce 25 to 30% net profit. And then the third segment just sucks the money out. If they turned off their personal computing division and got rid of it, Microsoft would be a $5 trillion company. Like, the amount of money they would churn out would be phenomenal. I still don't understand why they bother mucking around with producing some of those things themselves. They'd be better off to just sell it off and not have it. But they maintain these things for they've got LinkedIn, they've advertising arms and all this other stuff, home personal computing and whatnot, where they just have it there because it's a synergy with and it locks in with their business offerings, and those things run at break even. But then they got a couple of other things in there like the Surface Pros. They run at a loss. Gaming runs at a massive loss. These things just suck that money up, and it's a couple of $1 billion every year that it's just sucking the cost up. And it, I said 18 months ago, 2 years ago, if Microsoft got rid of if Xbox got rid of doing their hardware division and stopped manufacturing stuff, they get a $4 billion turnaround in their bottom line, just in that division alone. It would be a $4 billion improvement straight up to their bottom line because of not having the costs associated with it. And
Wow.
everyone's like, oh yeah, but the revenue, so it wouldn't matter because it's running at a loss. So the revenue is not even covering the variable cost inputs. So as soon as you stop, the revenue stops, yeah, but the cost to build them, as you said before, the cost disappears. All of a sudden,
Yeah,
you're in a better position, in a much
absolutely.
better position. So then you look at the low cost input, high revenue generation pieces they've got, which is the indie level AA software stuff. If you can get games built in 3 years, or you can get that rotating out at $40 or $50, and you just get the churn rate up, and you can sustain a subscription model with that, but you've got to keep churning them. That's why they bought all those studios, because that was the plan at the time. We can't afford to buy it in, we'll just build it ourselves, but we'll build it to this, high level indie AA level stuff. And then they forgot that that's what they were aiming at, and they tried to then go, we'll go quicker with less quality, or we'll go for the AAA stuff and try and outmaneuver it. And they forgot to have their foundation grounded before they went and tried to take on the big guys, and got absolutely spanked for it. A lot of people give shit to Jim Ryan for what he did with that ABK thing, but like, the guy had no starting position to negotiate from at all. He just threw his toys out of the cot and made a big enough noise, and people started listening, and the right people started listening, and look what result he got. Honestly, he had no
So I don't
right
mean
to start that argument.
I don't mean to laugh, but you said he threw his toys off the cot. I'm like, that reminds me of my children when they were
Yeah,
younger.
but look, and that was his job. His job was to be
Well, yeah,
obstructive
to
to that,
protect
because he's protecting his own.
protect
But
the
he had the
interests.
biggest
Yeah.
dummy spit about it, and he's doing his job to having that dummy spit. But he had no starting point. He had no basis to negotiate from. It
No,
should never have been an issue.
and he
And
ended up getting a
Microsoft,
10-year. He got a 10-year
yeah,
guarantee out of it. Yeah.
he got a 10-year guarantee out of it. And by the time that guarantee lapses, Xbox might not even exist.
Well,
Like,
that's the
come
irony of this
on.
whole thing. Like Xbox might not be making first party hardware anymore, and
Well,
clearly they're very heavily reliant now on releasing their games on the PlayStation. You look at what 82% or whatever of Black Ops 6 sales were on PlayStation.
mm,
Their other games that they're releasing on PlayStation are charting Circana in North America,
yep.
formerly NPD. Those games haven't charted when they were released on Xbox. One thing I want to read out of this Bloomberg article, Falky, I thought was kind of interesting. We
Mm,
talked about the price hike. We warned people about the price hikes post acquisition, or actually pre-acquisition. This could be this would happen. The price hike and other changes to the Game Pass plans are a sign that Xbox's big streaming push is still not generating the revenue it would like 8 years after launch, according to interviews with 7 current and former Xbox employees. That's why I'm saying if this thing's profitable, think about that for a second. They're saying it's profitable, and then they're doing this. The math ain't mathing.
yeah.
Um, According to interviews with seven current and former Xbox employees. The company's putting some of its top titles in the streaming service, but that's cutting into sales of higher margin games like Call of Duty, which came with Microsoft's 2023 acquisition of Activision Blizzard Inc., said the people who asked not to be identified discussing internal company matters. Xbox gave up more than 300 million in sales of Call of Duty on consoles and PCs last year, according to one of the former employees who asked not to be identified discussing internal estimates. That is, that's the tipping point right there.
Yeah.
That's the tipping point.
Yep. I
It
mean,
just,
what can you do?
Falky, I'm not, I can't say I'm surprised by any of this, to be honest with you. And we've been talking about this. We've had this conversation pre-acquisition, post-acquisition for the last 2 years. I don't think we ever predicted that they would exit hardware as soon as it sounds like they're going to. But I think
Well,
we did agree that they would exit hardware at some point, and that they would lean heavily into the behavior of a platform agnostic third party publisher, which they're doing.
well,
So
this is the thing that I agree with what you're saying. Just put that there. I agree with what you're saying. I wholeheartedly believe that they made their bed, they're gonna lie in it. The thing that irritates me is there is a pathway out of this, and they seem absolutely destined to just step on every rake and not walk down that pathway. Just rip the band-aid off. Be honest. Tell the people what you're going to do and say, right, hardware's done. We're going to focus on producing games, and you can access them in these places, and the Xbox memory will live on through these partnership arrangements and these licensing deals. But we're not making any hardware anymore. We're just a software company. We're a publisher. We're going to continue to make great games. This is our pathway. You can access them through a subscription service, or you can buy them on these platforms. And we're going to work with our other platform holders to make sure you get a great experience. Because I tell you right now, as soon as they say no more hardware, we're done, the doors at PlayStation will open up and there'll be conversations had that otherwise would never have been had. Because there's money in it for PlayStation now. There's beneficial mutual arrangements that can be made. Same deal with Nintendo, same with Steam, same with Epic, like mobile, Apple and Google. There's choices there, but for some reason they seem adamant to try and fight their way out of this by stepping on every rake and not just opening the gate, like tripping over trying to climb through an electric fence. If they just took that option, and you've seen glimpses of it working. Don't put things in the subscription service day and date. Do it 12 months later. People know it's going to come there, but they're the people that would have waited for a sale anyway. The ones that want it day one will buy it day one. That model's been proven with PlayStation and with Steam and with Nintendo and with Epic. It works. People are prepared to do that. There are people that will wait for a sale, and there are those that will just sub to the base level of subservice and access it at some point. Now, you can put advertising in certain areas, but you're going to have a low percentage of people wanting to access that. But if that's what your focus is, and you're getting games produced for PlayStation and Nintendo and Steam and mobile, and you're building them and you're able to make money out of those, why would you not just go there straight away? That's the piece that it's like they've got some ego trip that they just will not accept defeat, even though the same people who've got it to this point are the ones saying that everything's fine and can't
Yeah.
see the forest for the trees, because they refuse to admit that they've made poor decisions. I bet you the next time Phil gets up at some conference, he'll be, I'm so excited about the future and this and that, and everything's great and all the rest of it. And yet he won't front up to try and tell you that you now got to pay more money for less um, less benefit with your Game Pass stuff, or we're taking away the physical piece because we want to be able to say, well, the market just wasn't responding, and so because of economic conditions, we've decided to discontinue. No, grow a pair of stones, get out in front of it, and say, look, it didn't do what we thought it would do. It didn't perform how we thought it would perform. So we're just going to stop doing it. We don't have the support, and we'll keep an eye on it. And if we get to a point where we might be able to do it again, we'll look at it then. But as it stands right now, we're not going to do it. No more hardware, no more physical. We're going to run out some special commemorative, whatever it is, controllers or fridges or toasters or whatever the friggin' hell they decide to run out, and say, we did 25, 30 years of Xbox or whatever it was. We'll have some collector's edition stuff, but hey, this is what Xbox is no longer. This is what Microsoft Gaming looks like going forward. Software production house, this is what we're going to focus on. And we're going to be the number one third-party production publisher, and we're going to work with everyone, and gaming's going to be great. And then they can lean into this when we game everywhere, everyone wins, and all that other crap that they've been spruiking on about. Because at the moment, their messaging is garbage. It's confusing. They've got no clue where they're heading in which direction, and it seems like the left and the right hand aren't even talking. Like the fingers on the hands aren't even working together. If the new guy coming in is there to do what Satcher couldn't, if that is the case, then why did the board bother keeping Satcher around? He must be getting close to finished. Phil and his level of crew are on borrowed time for sure. You can't take a
Oh,
$300
I
million
think
loss on a strategy and then
I
turn around and say the only way to fix it is to charge people more and then have the
I
dust then fall out of your subscription model.
I wouldn't be surprised if Phil's gone before the end of the year.
Oh, he should be teeing up his exit plan right now.
I mean, honestly,
He'd be shocked if he isn't.
yeah, no, me too. And I don't know. I just as we are having this conversation, as I'm having conversations with others in DM while we're doing the show, I think the plug's going to get pulled soon. Not on the entire Xbox business, but there's going to be a grand reshuffling of sorts because the business hasn't performed well. It's underperformed, and this
Yeah.
acquisition was was the punch in the gut.
Well, it was like a reverse deacquisition or reverse acquisition or a reverse, what do they call it? A reverse merger or a deacquisition through acquisition, where basically you've got something and you want to get rid of it, but you don't want to take the write-downs for it and you don't want to take the losses. So you find a way of buying another company to then dump everything into it or use it as a dumping ground to carve out all your stuff but maintain the value. Sorry, and there's one last thing I would just want to touch on with all this before we wrap up, because I got to go at the top of the hour. Sorry. The turn it off versus sell it notion. If they turn it off, sorry, I'll start with if they sell it. I remember I put out a tweet saying, before all this happened, so what if they sold Xbox for $20 billion back then? And everyone howled me down for it because it was no, not chance, stupid. It's like, well, they're negative in cash flow. They've got limited assets and most of their expenditure would just wipe out anything they've got there as it is because they get everything given to them from the other parts of the organization. They wouldn't keep the buildings. They wouldn't keep most of the IT infrastructure. So all they're doing is offloading IP. And at that point in time, Halo Infinite was put on ice Forza Motorsport had failed, and they had very limited other first-party stuff coming out that wasn't an indie level. This is just after Redfall had happened, and they didn't have much going for them, and they were delaying and canceling all their big stuff down the pipeline. So if you did it on a discounted cash flow piece, and I was being generous, $20 billion to get rid of the headache that was Xbox was pretty generous. And everyone was, that won't work. Now, if they wanted to just cover their costs, they'd have to try and sell it for somewhere close to 100 billion just to cover the costs over the last couple of years and come out at break even. And that's not even looking at what it's worth. That's just to cover it. At the moment, it's potentially worth only 60 billion, 65 billion maybe. And that's with the hardware stuff gone. If they did that, they would have to take a $20 billion write-down of their goodwill into their profit and loss. Now, $2.5 billion goodwill write-down at Take-Two nearly got Strauss kicked out, and the board completely reset because of that Zynga purchase. It was pretty much the primary shareholders keeping him there because of that. Do you imagine what would happen if Microsoft had to front up to their board and say, hey, we've now got to put a $20 billion write-down in goodwill because we've decided to sell this thing off, and the best we can get is 60 billion. Or 80 billion would do the same thing because of the costs associated with it. But if we, so 60 billion, $20 billion write-down against our goodwill, that goes straight in the profit and loss. So all of a sudden, you've just wiped out not just this year's revenue that's been generated, net profit's been generated, you're wiping out potentially next year's or the year after. How many of the leadership that were associated with that do you think will still be there if the board had to be told about that? That's the sell option. If you shut it down, it's all cash flow. You still have all the IP, you still have all the facilities, you've still got all the tech, you've still got all that stuff. The goodwill doesn't get written down because it's based off the capacity to generate the cash flow. The capacity's still there because you still got all the IP. You just don't have the staff. But staff cost money. Staff aren't an asset when you're buying a company. Staff are a negative to buying a company.
Yeah. Overhead, yeah.
So if you got no staff, but you've still got all the IP in that, there's no goodwill write down. So when they shut down Mixer and they shut down Nokia and they shut down all those other things that they purchased, instead of selling them off and getting something for it, they shut them down. You know why? Because it cost them a lot less to do that than it did to sell them, because then they didn't have to tell their board and the shareholders didn't have to cop one.
Ooh. Oh, wait, Falky, are you suggesting that maybe the lights get turned off completely?
That would be the more sensible thing to do. If they don't want to, if they can't
and
hurry up at that point.
And what about the IP though? What about the studios they own?
You shut it all down and license it out.
Wow.
Because then it's passive income on a licensing arrangement, and you just write up these 5, 10, 20-year arrangements, or you do them case by case.
So who if you license COD, who makes it then?
You hand it out to whoever you want. Who makes a good first-person shooter game? Or who could make COD well?
Activision. I mean, Raven, Sledgehammer.
Yeah. So this is where it gets into that realm of what do? Do they turn it all off, or do they sell it all? And it'll be a matter of, I reckon they Frankenstein it.
I don't think. So you think it's better for?
No, they keep the IP.
And they license the IP out.
They license the IP out, and they're spinning out the studios, and they find some other one to buy it. So like EA might buy it.
So Falky, example there. Are you saying like, okay, hey, we'll sell the studios. Well, we're gonna keep ownership of the IP. But we're gonna sell the studios, or maybe the studios. Yeah, or maybe the studios become their own entities, right? We spin them off.
Possible.
And Sledgehammer.
That's an option.
Sledgehammer. They're not owned by anyone. They're their own entity, and they have a license deal with Microsoft to make Call of Duty, and that's it.
Yep. And then it's under contract, so then they can screw them on the quality. Microsoft can screw them on quality and screw them on time frame and screw them on everything else and not have the risk.
And I was supposed to say they have no risk because they own the IP. Everything is money at that point.
Exactly. So then,
Falky, whoa, Falky. If this, you make a very compelling case, by the way, sir.
yeah,
But then I think about this, okay, and I had the same conversation with Logic. I said, well, what if they could find someone, an investor, maybe a private equity firm, to buy up maybe some of these studios or prop up Xbox or something or buy Xbox. They sell off Xbox. This is what I said to you, right? They buy Game Pass, and then Microsoft's like, okay, well, we have the servers, we have Azure, we charge you, that's a fee. We help you prop this thing up. But you're saying that would be as cost efficient because they'd have to write some of that loss off, right?
yes. Well, yes, but
And they wouldn't get it,
that,
and they clearly wouldn't get whatever they paid for Activision back. I don't see that happening.
no, not a chance. But this is the issue. If you went and did that, as you suggested, then you're asking for whoever's buying it to sign up to licensing arrangements and supply arrangements and all that sort of stuff. You'd have to make it very compelling, which means you've got to get the Azure business and the other parts of the professional business to business things to buy into that deal. Are you prepared? Would you be prepared to forego $1 million worth of subscription fees for 5 years for Azure to sell off one gaming studio? And so that now, okay, so now there's a cost to Microsoft. The costs continue to add up at that point. You'd be better off to just cut it clean and go bang,
We're
off you
done.
go. We're going to divest the studio and its bare minimum physical assets.
And then what happens to Game Pass then?
So that's the thing. If it's done under licensing arrangement, and the game comes in. The games still have to be built to be
So
playable in Game Pass or whatever it is. Game Pass can just exist.
Game Pass will just exist. Microsoft will still own it because it's
Yeah.
and they'll support. Yeah, okay. So
It's
the
just
basic way,
it's a subscription storefront. It's no different to
it's just a
what like
storefront.
Netflix and the other ones do.
So
So
it's just a storefront app. Yeah, it's a streaming app. Microsoft owns it, and they're still going to get content. They're going to
yep,
license out to third party vendors to put games into Game Pass,
content in it. Yeah, yeah. Now
content in it. And
this is
they'll
where
license it. Yeah.
yeah. So this is where it gets a bit more intricate in how they approach it. My suggestion to them would be you don't chase third-party multi-platform games to go into Game Pass. You have your own games going in there and you offer it as a premium service. You have your own games going in there and exclusive third-party games going in there, and you make it available on competitor platforms. That way,
Sony won't go for that.
why wouldn't they?
I don't think Sony wants a competitor on there.
Oh,
Because that
for
would be
streaming.
that would be a direct competitor to PlayStation Plus. Game
That
Pass.
would be a shit. That would be if Xbox is or if Microsoft Gaming is looking to sell games. But this is where it becomes the exclusivity. It's exclusive to think of it as it's exclusive to Game Pass. It's the only place you can get it. You can't buy it. You can't buy it on a different platform. Like they're not making the game for sale on Epic and Steam and all the rest of it. It would have to be you can only get this in this service.
Mm-hmm.
It's not competing against anything else.
Well, then they would be forcing Sony's hand then.
Effectively.
Like we're not going to give you Call of Duty unless we're not going to give you Call of Duty unless
so they can't do that with Call of Duty because of what Jim Ryan did.
Oh, because of the 10-year deal. That's right.
10-year deal. So, but it's less around. So there's obviously the big ones that they would want to sell because they make money, but you don't put them in the subscription service. You have the subscription service has got its own stuff in it, and you absolutely have to lean into that model where you can only get it through here, and then it becomes a matter of you go and talk to Sony. So, I'm going to have games you can only access through Game Pass, and I want to put it on your device. I'm not going to compete with you on hardware, and I'm not going to compete with you on selling games. If I want to sell games, I will sell them through for the games I want to sell and have to sell, I'll sell them through your storefront, and we'll do the 30% deal. But I want my specific piece here for my digital library to exist in this guise to be exclusive, and then so I'll give you 20% or whatever the fee is to access through your point. Now it's a bit more of a difficult thing to pull off, but
so what
that's
you're
the
saying,
only way Game Pass really exists going forward.
Falky,
Because
so what you're saying, I don't mean to interrupt, Falky, is what you're saying is that this would be the equivalent to like an Ubisoft Plus on PlayStation 5.
Basically, but it would be the only way you could play most of those games. That's the kicker here. That's always been the issue with the cannibalization thing, is Game Pass at the stupidly low value is cannibalizing game sales. Now either Microsoft is back to selling games and Game Pass just disappears, or they lean into it and treat it like its own platform, which it could be, and they use it as a supplementary point where if they license out their IP for their stuff to come in, they know what they're selling, and that never goes into Game Pass, or they have stuff that is in Game Pass only and is priced accordingly, and they never sell those games. It's a one or the other point. Now there might be some that say after 2 years it comes out of it comes into the service and whatnot, similar to what like PlayStation does, but it would be for Xbox owned titles only. Because the only other way to get Sony to agree to that is that they don't have to pay for it to go into their subscription service. Because at the moment, if they want to put something in PS Plus, there's a transaction that occurs. Well, if that transaction doesn't occur and they don't have to put it in PS Plus, but it's still accessible and they're getting some kind of revenue stream out of it because 20%, say, for example, of the monthly fee of having Game Pass on PlayStation goes to PlayStation, they have had less outgoings for more money. That's how you get these deals done, because there's no real competition point there. All they're doing is providing support to a third-party publisher, and they're getting money out of it. It would take an awful lot to go from where they are right now to that kind of reality. But that is a pathway they could take for an ultimate end if they want to just avoid having these massive shutdowns and write-offs, where they could actually turn this thing into making really good money for all parties involved.
Falky, you might be onto something. I mean, if the pitch to Sony is, hey, we're out of hardware, we're no longer a competitor, we're going to give you some additional, we're going to give you a little cut, right? A little taste of the revenue, right? Which is going to boost their numbers, right? And it's going to pull people to PlayStation. So, hey, we're going to offer Game Pass. We're not doing a console. You got to imagine PlayStation. Some of our console consumers are going to go and buy PlayStations now, right? That's going to be a boost to your hardware. It's going to further increase engagement in your ecosystem. You're going to be able to sell people more shiny stuff because that's what you like to do, PlayStation. You like to sell them the new controllers, the fancy headsets. You like to squeeze pennies out of them. You'll have that opportunity, right?
Yeah.
And then we'll give you a little bit of the juice from Game Pass. Very similar to Ubisoft Plus. Falky, we may at the end of the year, we may go back and look at the show and say, remember when Falky pitched this idea and it happened?
If they want to reach out to me, I can shoot me a DM and I'll send them the invoice. But or if they want to sign me up to consult, I'm more than happy to do it. But it's like it's a sketch out there on the back of an envelope as to how do we get to a point where it makes sense that we can actually offer some value but still maintain our customer base or have a customer base and still produce something. Because the end result here is they get out of hardware and they go back into being a third-party publisher. They've got to get rid of this cannibalization issue with Game Pass. And at the moment, that's what's causing their biggest detractor to revenue, as, again, clearly evident by what's sitting on your screen.
Yeah, I think some of the live chat agree with you. By the way, everyone in the live chat, let me know what you think of Falky's sales pitch here, or what he thinks could maybe happen with Xbox Game Pass. I see people, no way Sony's going for Game Pass on. I don't know. I don't know. Is this what's that? Trey's Rector? I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. I don't Yeah, I don't totally disagree with you. But the way Falky's explaining this, it makes sense to me. If you think about Ubisoft Plus existing on PlayStation, similar thing, right?
Yep.
There'll be certain games you can only get in Game Pass, right? Although I don't know, but then again, I think about that for a second. I'm like, Game Pass, right? Premium tier on
Yep.
PlayStation. But I still think that Microsoft would still want to sell those games though.
Well,
Because I mean,
that's where the
because
decision needs to be made.
they've proven that at least on PlayStation that those games have sold very well. There's clearly demand for some of
Mm.
those games.
Oh,
So
absolutely. And so
do
then
you want to
lies the point.
do you want to cannibalize those sales now that you're back to
Yeah. Pick one. Do you
yeah.
want to sell the games on platforms where people will buy the games and just wear the so sorry guys, we stuffed this up, we're just turning Game Pass off and not have it, or just have it for PC only, or whatever you want to do, and split your business between console and PC? Or do you say, right, well, we've got to find a way of making this work? Where can you, and again, I talk about subscription services and value and all that, props and all that sort of stuff. Most of the Netflix, Paramount, Amazon, heaps of those other streaming, and not just that, even the book streaming services and music streaming and all that, where the individuals exist, the not the individuals, so the first party is what I'm trying to think of, where the first party production exists, they only exist in that platform, right? You can't get them anywhere else, but the third party stuff is wherever they want to do it. You can't watch Squid Games anywhere else except for Netflix, and you can't buy it anywhere. The Witcher on Netflix, the only place you could watch it was there. But at some point, they will release it on DVD, or they'll release it somewhere else, or it'll shift services or whatever when it's run its course. But if you're talking about new releases in that 12 to 18-month window, you either put it in Game Pass and that's where it exists and it doesn't go anywhere else, and you don't sell it. So the people want to play it, they've got to buy the Game Pass. Or you sell it and you don't put it in Game Pass for 2 years.
Yeah, I don't know, Falky. This is I
Sorry.
mean, you're making no worries.
If there's
Yeah.
no competition, so just reiterate, if you take away the hardware competition and there's no threat to the platform, to Sony, to PlayStation, there's no threat to the platform, and you're not cannibalizing Sony's game sales revenue because they're third-party publisher. Sony didn't give a shit. They only release a couple of first parties every year, and they make bucket loads of money off that. But they got their own internal pressures to deal with. They don't care if it's Xbox, EA, Ubisoft, Team Cherry, old mate in his parents' basement who spent 10 years building whatever that game is. They don't care if they're getting money as long as whatever you're providing isn't cannibalizing their ability to generate that money. They offer you a storefront with a consumer base that pays money for stuff. So if you want to build Forza Horizon 10 based in Uganda or something like that, on Safari, and suddenly you're selling it, but it's not in the subscription, PlayStation's getting their 20% off the sale or 30% off the sale or whatever it is, they're happy. And then when the sales tail off and it goes into the subscription model, if it's not going into theirs and they're having to pay money for it, but it goes into Game Pass and PlayStation's getting 20% of the sub fee for Game Pass, they have not only avoided a cost, but they've created a revenue stream that they otherwise didn't have. And if you've got 20 million people still subscribing to Game Pass in that model at $20 a month, $15 a month, whatever, $30, whatever it is, and there's a dozen games that they can only play in that piece, and PlayStation is getting 20% of that revenue, doors will open and conversations will be had. So they're not going to say no to tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue for no input cost. They're not going to say no to that.
I don't disagree with you. I mean, if it's there's no such thing as free money, but if there's little lift and effort on their part to generate a couple $100 million,
Two guys do some coding in the storefront to allow an app to be on there.
yeah, and then I mean, and then the other the other scenario that could happen too is that now you potentially get people who are going to pick up a PlayStation now, right? Who maybe weren't PlayStation owners because they've migrated over from Xbox, potentially. And that's going to generate additional revenue for your ecosystem.
Exactly. And
The
this
Wolf
is
said it would
where
be a weekend of coding changes.
yeah. But
Yeah, no, yeah.
this is where it becomes that instead of it being a race to the bottom between enemies, it's a concerted effort amongst rivals to do better.
Mm,
This is why Nintendo and PlayStation get along so well now. They
yeah.
treat each other as rivals, and they're
Well, they
always
can
looking at
stand each
each
other
other's
for
back.
years.
Yeah, they don't treat each other with as much contempt as they used to. Still a bit of contempt there,
No,
but they don't go too hard. But they treat each other as rivals to the trying to be better than the other, rather than a race to the bottom to try and destroy the other. And that's where the difference is. The rewards come out for us.
that's a great
Look at
point.
how well that works. If you could get, you need new leadership at Microsoft to be able to get this thing to happen, because the current leadership is just not interested in doing anything other than trying to piss down everyone else's throats. It just won't happen. But if you get the right kind of leadership in there that sees these sort of opportunities, and this is just one of several opportunities that exists. This is the one that I think has got the most, like, the biggest end game advantage. But to get there, there's a lot of hurdles that need to be jumped and a lot of buy-in from certain people. And you can get that working well if you get the messaging right. The messaging at the moment from Microsoft is Xbox is rubbish. The leadership's got no vision. They keep banging their heads against the wall on something that doesn't work, and they're just, yeah, it needs to be churned out. But anyway, if you do that, you avoid that. This is the sort of stuff is like end game result for avoiding those massive write
Yeah,
downs, and those write downs will have a massive impact.
and that's what they want to
So
avoid. Yeah,
yeah,
and that would
so
piss the shareholders
that's
off. The board.
well, it would be bad enough that it would require board members to be churned out, because the share price would just plummet. Because you're wiping out the earnings per share for a couple of years. It would
Hmm.
plummet.
Wow.
Anyway, sorry, I'm gonna have to finish my carrying on at that point because I need to get going.
Yeah, no, Falky. This is actually a great time to end the show on that note. I really appreciate your insight as always, Falky. Thank you so much
That's right.
for joining me this evening. In your case, it's the morning, so thank you. I appreciate your time as always, Falky. I don't know if you want to be found, but if you do, let everyone know where they can find you.
Yeah, you can find me at Forky87 on X/Twitter. You can find me poking around on a few different podcasts. Yeah, again, as I said, if you're going to take, not aimed at yourself, but for others, if you're going to take victory laps, keep them classy, because there are some people who are genuinely hurting for this, and it's shaping up like we're going to, I don't know, take one in the teeth for the gaming in general.
Mm-hmm.
We've always been heavily critical of the direction they've been going for the last decade, but at no stage did we want this. Did we want
Yeah.
any of this? We didn't want it. We wanted better. That's all we ever wanted as gamers.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So
110%. 110%. So,
yeah, but
all right.
there's nothing.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with saying "I told you so" to those who certainly deserve to be told.
Well, I mean, that's why I said I'm taking a little bit of a victory lap because there were some agitators out there that were being very unreasonable.
One particular
And
agitator who
yeah.
I'm going to wax lyrical for 30 seconds. One particular agitator, who on a show a couple of years ago when I pointed out the issues with Microsoft leadership, decided that I was wrong, wouldn't explain why, had a crack at me about it, and then continued to have a crack at me about it for several months afterwards. And the same leadership, same people, and what I said 3 years ago was issues, and look where we are now. So I'm not specifically going to seek that person out and point out that I was right and they were wrong, but yeah, I am sitting here with a wry smile on my face, knowing and content in my own person that I knew what I was talking about, and they are completely fucking wrong.
Yeah. No, I don't. Yeah, absolutely, 110%. But Falky, thank you so much again. Always a pleasure. Everyone in the live chat, thank you so much. Please do me a favor, hit that like button. If you're new, consider subscribing, hit the bell notification so you're alerted when we go live. Who knows, depending on what else breaks tomorrow, I may do another BRAP rant. There could be some incoming news actually the next couple of days. So keep an eye out for that. But thank you again. I am playing Ghost of Yote right now, as you can say. Oh, let me grab this super chat here.
Jeez,
Valnor with a $2 super chat says, to a victory lap. Cheers. Thank you. Appreciate that. But I am playing Ghost. Here we go. Xbox just needs to go full third party. Cut the crap. No, I'm playing Ghost of Yote and I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying it a lot, much more than its predecessor. And I'll just leave it at that. Yeah.
Excellent.
So yeah. But Falky, thank you again. And everyone in the live chat, thanks for watching. Please let us know what you guys think in the comment section. And we will see you next time. Thank you so much for watching. Take care.